Organizations are now at a crossroads. As their eagerness to innovate with AI grows, so does their level of concern. They are beginning to reduce the reliance on AI. I'm Eric Bruzek. Let's step forward. This is the Step Forward podcast. We'll be discussing how disruptive technologies like AI, cybersecurity, and IoT are shaping the business of today. In today's episode, we'll be discussing how organizations are using alternative technologies to help them overcome their AI anxiety. We'll also be discussing how these alternative technologies will evolve, AI's sweet spot, and how you can move forward without regret. Now, when I say AI anxiety, I actually mean language model anxiety. So language models, of course, are the algorithms that sit underneath Gen AI and Genic AI, and they process human language and generate human language and images and video. They also perform rapid reasoning, and that's used for business intelligence purposes and also for business process automation. Now, machine learning is not included in the definition of AI I'm using here. That's actually a form, as you'll see, more of an alternative technology. So that's the context I'll be using AI in this episode. According to a recent McKinsey survey, approximately 2/3 of 2,000 people said that their organizations had not even begun to scale AI yet. So this is a little different than the hype that's maybe out there that you hear out there in the market. And it's also different from, the actual true success stories that are in the market as well. So this is really where AI stands. It is not scaled yet. But why is that? In our experience, that's due to three main factors: overhyped promises, mounting costs, and increased levels of business risk. So overhyped promises. Another way of saying that would be capabilities that are advertised for AI versus capabilities that it actually does. And within that particular context, our clients most often cite accuracy, and they cite the effort to get AI to actually work as the two key factors there for overhyped promises. So if we take a look at the actual accuracy of AI is really good for human interactions and processing level tasks. It's really good at question and answering. It's really good at summarization. It's really good at content generation. And language models like GPT-4 and Claude can get about 85 to 95% levels of accuracy with that, which is very good. But if you take more structured use cases and say you put AI towards pattern matching or you put it towards forecasting, it doesn't perform nearly quite as well there. It actually gets 60 to 80% levels of accuracy there. So quite a bit far removed from the other use case I mentioned. However, if you use machine learning, a type of alternative technology, it does get 85 to 95% in those situations. Now, if you look at effort, most organizations cite that the effort and time it takes for them to train their AI models and build data foundations is a lot more, materially more than they planned, than they expected. If I would put some numbers to it for you, I would, think of it as organizations will typically expect 3 to 6 months to perform the data foundations to train their models. In actuality, they typically get 6 months. It takes them 6 months to over a year to do that. So say another way, organizations often expect months to do that. It often takes them a year. Even if AI is fit for purpose capability-wise, it might not necessarily be the right answer due to mounting costs. According to the FinOps Foundation, when it's looking at the overall expected cost for cloud and AI, because those two things do go together. Organizations commonly spend 30 to 200 times more on cloud and AI than they expect. Now, I'm gonna say that number again because it's a pretty big number. So that is 30 to 200 times more of AI and cloud costs spent over an entire organization for what they expect. So this is what a CFO sees. And it doesn't matter if an AI initiative has a business case or maybe a few initiatives have a business case, in a particular organization. The CFO is going to see the lot, and that's what they're seeing. But what they're also seeing is they're seeing that when their organization is using more forms of alternative technologies, they're getting ongoing operating cost savings between 30 to 40%. So they're also seeing that too. Now, probably right here, right now, the single biggest inhibitor of AI's adoption is due to higher levels of business risk. So how many of you know organizations, or maybe your own, that not only seem to have a lack of confidence in language models, but also genuinely fear AI language models? How many of you, again, know organizations or perhaps your own that have approved one AI language model type? Could be Claude, could be Copilot, but then when you go to add another one, that process is extremely difficult, because then again there's this fear behind it. But that fear is well placed. It is a well placed fear, because 72% of organizations have reported that they have increased levels of regulatory risk when they've used AI, so associated with AI. Now, a lot of that has to do with PII, or personally identifiable information, but it doesn't just have to be PII that exposes them to increased regulatory risk. And there, you'll see similar things too with IP risk. IP, if you like, going out the door. That's also been increased due to AI's usage. And then if you really look at brand risk, so coming back to things like we think about things like hallucinations, which is very common. Hallucinations is nothing more than when you put something to the market, you're giving misinformation, right? Because that's really what's happening there. And if you look at even a model like GPT-4, 26 to 43% of GPT-4's output hallucinates. Now, I didn't say the whole thing hallucinates, right? But some level of hallucination in that output, 26 to 43%. So you can see two things. You can see why these are legitimate obstacles to AI's adoption from a business risk perspective. But then you can see just overall, between all these factors, why companies are reducing their reliance on AI. So it's due to these factors that organizations are reducing their reliance on AI, and they're also increasing the reliance on alternative technologies. Now, what's interesting there is these alternative technologies are in use by most organizations today in some way, shape, or form. And many organizations are considering using them even more. So I'm going to go through these four key alternative technology types now. But before I do that, I just want to say a couple things up front. Firstly, this is not a vendor list. This is, these technologies, if you like, they underpin vendor technologies. They power vendor technologies. So so they power things like SaaS platforms, PaaS platforms, APIs as a service, Salesforce, Workday, Databricks, Janus Graph, Google Voice, just to name a few. These technologies power that. The other thing is that these technologies can be used individually, or they also can be used in tandem. And they could be encapsulated, many of them encapsulated into one vendor, particularly large vendors. They could be across different vendors that are working together. They could also be within a custom application. So they can be used individually or in tandem. So let me go through them. The first one I'll note is what I call interactive rule-based systems. So interactive rule-based systems use decision trees and predefined logic to automate tasks, orchestrate business processes, and also to create dynamic journeys, user journeys, customer journeys. And these technologies, within those technologies, you would have heard technologies like robotic process automation or RPA, digital process automation or DPA. They sit within this technology category, and they're oftentimes bundled into vendor applications, a lot of times large vendor applications. The next alternative technology is what I call context-aware systems. Context-aware systems surface features and make decisions based upon user context. So that can be anything from location, weather, time, and relationships. So GPS smartphone applications are great examples of this. And the underlying technologies of these, a lot of them have to do with different forms of databases like time series databases and graph databases that are used for relationships. The next alternative technology type is what I call behavioral aware systems. So these kind of systems, these kind of technologies surface features and make decisions based upon user profile, user preferences, past user behavior, and like user behavior. And underlying that is really, now you're starting to get into machine learning. You're starting to take advantage of machine learning's pattern matching capabilities to do this. And that tends to encompass itself in vendor applications and also features in large vendor applications. And then finally, the last one is non-language model systems. So they make decisions and surface features based upon algorithms, and quite complex algorithms, but nonetheless they don't have any language understanding. These aren't language models or language algorithms. So an example of this is computer vision. So computer vision could be used for anything from physical security when you have AI-enabled cameras, but can also be used for inventory to monitor stock levels. So that's an example. These technologies aren't just standing still, though. They're evolving very rapidly. In fact, just as rapidly as AI. So if you take a look at interactive rule-based systems, they're becoming more and more API-based and more reusable. So think libraries of pre-canned, out-of-the-box capability that could be used for different sectors and different functions. That's where that particular technology type is moving. For context-aware systems, they're combining time and relationships. So time-based relationships type of use cases and purposes is where that's evolving to. And that could be used within business intelligence use cases within organizations and also for customer features. For behavior aware systems, where they're moving towards is they're moving more towards self-learning, where their machine learning models can actually adapt in dynamic settings, where human flow and the things that are happening in real time without constantly being retrained. Sounds a lot like AI, doesn't it? But it actually isn't. And then also non-language models, where they're moving towards is they're going from cloud heavy to edge smart. So sub-technologies like TinyML, they're able to run even as far down the edge as your devices. And of course, that's going to be much lower latency and much lower energy consumption. Although these alternatives are quite compelling, organizations are not abandoning AI altogether. Instead, they're focusing it on its sweet spot. And that sweet spot has 3 core value propositions. The The first value proposition is tailored engagement. And this is where the human-like interaction capabilities of AI come in, and the original content generation capabilities. So great for things like virtual assistants and anything that will be taking advantage of those capabilities. The next value proposition is rapid decision-making. So this is really where the combination of AI's capability to look at overall trends, and then to be able to look at use cases where speed is more important than accuracy. Accuracy is still important, but speed is more important. So when you think like simulation, business simulation, market simulation, demand simulation for products and technology, really, really good in those situations. Then adaptive process automation is the last value prop for AI. And that's really where you start getting in situations where rule-based systems, there's just too many different pathways, too many different alternatives for it to really be able to do. And also where the nature of your business or the circumstances where you're placing a certain capability, technology capability, there's just too much dynamism, and you really need a true autonomous capability. And that's where AI comes in. So obviously things like agentic features there. So we talked about the features and value propositions of alternative technologies. We talked about the features and value propositions of AI. And if you first look, you might think, well, these two things are evolving separately. There's two different pathways. And actually there's not. The trend is that these two types of technologies are evolving together. So we are evolving to a hybrid world. Now, how do you take advantage of that? How do you step forward in a hybrid world? And I'll leave you with 4 guiding principles to keep in mind as you do that. The first is you want to make technology decisions on purpose, with efficiency, and with care. So with purpose, what you want to do is make sure that your strategic objectives are being translated down to the precise features that your customers and internal users actually need. From an efficiency perspective, you want to employ good FinOps discipline and strategies, and also business case discipline, so you can use that cost efficiency, cost effectiveness, and ROI to help inform your decision making. And then when it comes to care, using more alternative technologies will lower your business risk profile. But also what's interesting is that alternative technologies can actually enhance and actually shepherd AI, so to directly impact its adoption. The second guiding principle is you want to maximize cross-organizational participation, because quite simply, the more who participates, the more benefits and the more economies of scale you're going to get. Now, I'm not minimizing the effort and complexity it takes to do that. That takes a lot of effort, but I am focusing and want to kind of double down on how vital that is. The next value proposition is no regret by design. So you spend a lot of effort on data foundation work, and that's not going to go to waste, because in AI, you're going to even need more of it. So that's something to obviously keep in mind. And the last one is evolve your experiments while experimenting to evolve. So what I mean by that is you really want to pay attention to the market. The market is moving extremely fast in this space. There's new trends very, very frequently. There's new patterns, there's new tactics. So you want to take them and not only incorporate them into your strategies, you actually want to incorporate them into your experiments and your in-flight trials, etc. And you also want to be able to, one of the trends that to take advantage of is the whole operations becoming more in vogue. And what I mean by that is things are almost going back to basics. So where AI used to be, you want to be first, put out the capability first, get it sticky, get people noticing, get people using your platform, coming into your business, generate demand. Those times are not over, but it's not as much of a focus now, because it's the whole adage, it's all but done. So what's actually happening now is that companies are starting to more get back to basics and looking at customer-facing, front-of-house use cases, but really seeing how back-of-house operations use cases can be used first as a way to trial it, particularly from a business risk, hallucination, misinformation perspective. So that's really how you can step forward with these technologies together in a hybrid world. So in summary, AI is definitely here to stay, but alternative technologies are here to stay too. AI is being focused on its sweet spots and evolving alongside alternative technologies in a hybrid world. So you have options. You don't need to feel pressure of FOMO and adopting AI according to someone else's business. You can step forward according to the way you need for your business. If this podcast helped you take that step forward, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have any thoughts or suggestions, you can put them in the comments below. We will look at them. Our next episode will focus on securing your AI implementations to allow you to break that AI fatigue cycle and finally scale AI. This has been the Step Forward Podcast. I'm Eric Bruzek. See you next time.